Good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Baker with the Great Game of Business, and welcome to our Friday Great Game of Business Live, Surviving and Thriving in Times of Chaos. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Rich Armstrong, president of the Great Game of Business. How are you, Rich?
Good, Steve. Thank you.
Awesome. It's kind of weird to have done this live together last week with Jack, and now we're all sequestered and quarantined in our homes. I imagine most of the folks watching out there, we are really all kind of dealing with this craziness. We want these Friday talks to be very personal and loose. The agenda today is we're going to start with our housekeeping here. You'll look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. That's how we're going to handle questions today. Rich and I will be reading those later in the broadcast here. We also want to make sure that you understand you're muted, so use that function rather than chat. Q&A button, that's important. And then as we get started, you also should remember to check out all of you can send in your questions that we can answer throughout the week through our greatgame.com/crisis. And there you'll find not only the place where you can plug in questions, but you can also pick up some great resources like this. I don't know if you can see it. This is my magical high-tech way of showing you some of the resources: Taking the Fear Out of the Workplace, Surviving and Thriving in Times of Chaos, a 10-step guide, and Black Swan action guide that we talked about last week. And for a limited time, we're also offering the book, Get in the Game, the 10 Steps to Implement the Great Game of Business, free of charge as an audiobook. We also have with us a special guest today from Colorado, Peter Reeburgh, who's the head of SummitCove Vacation Lodging in Keystone, Colorado. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Really good. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Peter, we're going to start by answering some, or rather reading some of the answers from the community from last week when we asked a question. What are you doing to keep your team together during tough times? And what suggestions do you have for those people who are struggling to avoid layoffs and keep their people? Rich, you want to start reading those answers from the community?
Yes, Steve, I will. One thing, as Steve said, last week, we wanted to make sure that we got some suggestions from our community of practitioners. Obviously, Steve and I and the Great Game team don't have all the answers, and we want to make sure we're tapping into the community of what they're doing to keep their people together and of course, avoid some layoffs at this critical time. There was, of course, a lot of answers, and so I've kind of grouped them into 4, 5, 6 themes here that I wanted to just touch on. Any of these answers we are going to have available on a web page that now is available on greatgameofbusiness.com/crisis that allows anyone from the community to see the latest in terms of recommendations from our community, all the resources that Steve talked about as well. So when we ask that question in terms of what they're doing to keep their people together and avoiding layoffs, the first thing that was definitely prevalent in a lot of the answers was the idea of staying positive and keeping up the communication. It's important to stay positive at the same time to not shy away from the reality and to communicate the reality. A lot of people talked about the anxiety that a lot of employees are having, and a lot of the leadership is having as well, the stressful times we're in. The best cure for anxiety, of course, is frequent communication, education, and of course, action. The thing I do want to reiterate there is to make sure that there is a feedback loop, that it's not all top-down communication, that you're getting feedback from your people and you're getting ideas from your people, and have that there is definitely a loop of communication going on. It's plan, act, get feedback, and then adjust. So think about that. And that was definitely pointed out in a lot of the answers. The second theme that kind of came up was this idea that we have to keep the safety and health of our people as the top priority, to make sure that our people do understand that we want to keep them and their families safe in this time. I know last week Jack talked about our huddle, our meeting cycle at SRC, and a lot of people talked about that and how they were trying to incorporate that same kind of rhythm of communication. The first item we talk about in that 9 o'clock meeting at SRC is what is the current health of our organization? Are there any confirmed cases? Are there issues with employees needing and having trouble in getting a medical assistance? How can we help? We also cover all the strategies, each of the business units, getting information from the employees about what they're doing to help kind of stay healthy in the workplace. So there's a lot of feedback, and then we take the 1:30 meeting and come up with a plan and then share that back out and adjust again the next morning. So I think there was points made of that same kind of rhythm being used through the organization. There was also some answers regarding if you're declared an essential business, because you are in that situation where now you're asking your people to come to work, and you need to make sure that they're not just healthy at home in terms of stay at home orders or stay virtual, but now you're bringing them to the workplace. So how do you keep the workplace safe? I thought there were some interesting suggestions. One came from the idea of staggering breaks. A lot of times we have breaks and we bring all the employees into a certain area. Some of our practitioners have staggered those breaks so they don't congregate in large groups. Also the idea of expanding your work day so that you have people coming in the morning, part of your workforce coming in the morning and part of your workforce coming in the evening or the afternoon. That way you don't have any great number, or you're able to reduce the number of people at the shop at any given moment. So I thought that was good. Taking temperatures of your people coming in and going from the facilities, the frequency of cleaning. I know that my wife works at one of our facilities that's been deemed essential, and they have to track that they are documenting every day that they are cleaning their areas at least 3 times a day. So just things like that are very important.
I think one point I'd
yes.
throw in too is that that documentation is really, really important. If at some point the government is going to be doing reimbursement, that sort of thing, documentation of your processes and what you've done could be very, very important. So I think everyone could take a lead from that.
Yes, exactly. That was actually a suggestion from one of our practitioners about make sure that you're documenting everything right now, because it will help you in any relief that maybe comes with tax benefits and things in the future. So great point. The other thing is there was a lot of feedback from the practitioners and how they're kind of adjusting or working the 3-legged stool, as Jack talked about in the webinar last Friday. How they're tapping into understanding or educating their employees on what how they would look in terms of if we had to do any kind of reduced work, is how we would supplement their pay in terms of state, federal, and what the company can do. The most important feedback was everybody's really kind of rallying around what opportunities are out there in terms of relief funds. And the big takeaway is that there are a number of programs being ramped up quickly by the SBA in the form and from the bank, and that collaboration. SBA disaster relief funds that are up to $2 million. There's other relief funds that provide delays in terms of the principal payments, other emergency credit line expansion for operating expenses. So just encourage you to get with your bank, get with the SBA. I did hear from a practitioner that the SBA has subcontracted out some resources so that they can respond quickly. So hopefully you don't see any delays with that communication as well. So that was a big one. And again, to Steve's point, they're documenting everything. I heard that a lot in terms of the answers, is to make sure that you're documenting so you have information on the activities that you went through this to take advantage of tax benefits.
Yeah, awesome, Rich. Awesome. One thing that we might throw in as well is that from the individual side, I know we've got some individual contractors out there and sole proprietors, folks who are working on their own, that unemployment has actually been expanded. Unemployment insurance has been expanded to include contractors, self-employed individuals. So don't forget to check that out. And that is individualized by state. So you can do a couple of quick Google searches and find out how to get to your state's unemployment insurance site. And I think they're trying to automate that as much as possible. So to Rich's point earlier, they're trying to take out some of the red tape and some of the obstacles so that we can get people help as quickly as possible. But the important thing is, as Rich started out, you've got to take action and do it today.
Very good.
So Rich, was that about all the categories that you saw?
That was it. That was
Okay,
it. Again,
fantastic.
just to make sure that everyone knows is that, you know, those specific answers and some of that communication be updated on the web page, just for time to be able to answer every one of them, right? Or provide every one of these answers at this point in time is difficult, but all of them will be on the website.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Well, that gives us a perfect segue then into talking with Peter Reeburgh from SummitCove Vacation Lodging in Keystone, Colorado. Welcome again, Peter.
Thank you.
Hey, man, I got to tell you, I joke a lot about, you know, my art major and all this sort of thing. I always say I spent most of my student loans in Colorado. There's a new wrinkle to that. Most of it was spent in Summit County. Thanks a lot. Actually, no, thank you a lot. That was pretty great days. You know, we heard your story from Kevin Walter, one of our top coaches and a practitioner and a co-owner of Tasty Catering in Chicago, Illinois. He's dealing with his own issues with lots of employees, and everybody in the world just stopped ordering catering, right? So we'll be talking to Kevin in future shows, but he told us your story and it blew us away. And I think it's important that the community hear it directly from you. So Peter, tell us about what happened at SummitCove, what happened in Colorado, and what's happening right now.
Okay, let me give you some kind of quick background about our business. So we're a vacation lodging company. We do in short-term vacation rentals. Everything's individually owned, and we manage everything from a studio condo all the way up to a 6-bedroom private home. We literally do everything in-house. So maintenance, housekeeping, guest services, owner services, you name it, we do it in-house. And we started the business in 2001, and interestingly enough, we started the business when I bought my first property in 2001, just for 3 days after 9/11. So it was September 14th. So,
wow.
It was a bit of a scary time. But, you know, unlike this, we were able to get rentals and things like that. And so today we actually have, we've been in business for 19 years and have basically anywhere from basically 30 to 50 employees. So 30 full-time year round. And then we have 50 employees during the ski season right about. So those are seasonal workers, housekeepers. We have people on our vacation planning call center. And my wife works in the business with me too, which is pretty cool. Certainly couldn't do that without her.
Yeah, for sure. And part of those seasonal workers now, they come back to you every year because you're a great place to work, right?
Yeah, a large portion of them do. And so it's kind of nice. You know, it's something where, you know, through this whole thing, and I'll touch on this a little bit when I start going into this, but, you know, we're at our 2-week point of making the most money that we make all year. And it just didn't happen. Had this all happened 2 weeks later, even 2.5 weeks later, would have been just fine, would have been sort of business as usual. And unfortunately, it just didn't unfold that way.
So this hit 2 weeks before peak, like
peak season, yeah, spring break.
Deal. Yeah,
exactly. Spring break is our big time of the year. So it's interesting, kind of going into the timeline of this. You know, we've been practicing Great Game. We launched with our entire company in October, so we haven't been doing this very long at all. It's been about 2 years of prep. We really had to get our finances and stuff together. But we started seeing some weakness in about the 2nd or 3rd week of February. And that was on our weekly huddle. We could see the numbers and we could just see the barely beginnings of this. And we weren't quite sure if this was the virus or not. And so we kept going along. And then we had the announcement that there's a case in Colorado. And then it was in Keystone, and it was like, oh geez, you know, I was texting my competitors, is it you? Is it you? And suddenly I get a call at about 11:30 at night from the county health department saying, you know, the guest isn't there now, but he's departed, but he was the positive case in one of your properties. And so it was just like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And so it was really just very close communication. Initially, it was going through making sure all the contact points with our employees and the guests. You know, we had a maintenance man go in there, fix a smoke detector while he was in there with the guest in-house. We had somebody else deliver towels. We had a housekeeper go in 23 hours after the guest departed. And so the health department was really great in trying to mitigate and, you know, see what the risk factors were for our employees. I think overall we had about 5 or 6 people that had contact with this guest.
Okay.
And so the Summit County Health Department has been fantastic, absolutely great as far as communicating and working with our employees, providing resources and giving us access to nurses for our employees to talk to them and really squash down that fear. And there was a lot of fear that happened literally on the night of March 5th. March 6th, it was, you know, this is big news. This is the first case in Colorado that, you know, here our company is the epicenter, and how do we navigate that? And so we worked really hard. Our team really came together. I'm so proud of them for coming together with a plan with, you know, what do we announce and that sort of stuff. And luckily, you know, we didn't need to interview anybody. It really, everything kind of came out through the county health department, which is really good. And so, you know, over the weekend, so that next Saturday, there were more cases in Colorado. So the shift, kind of the spotlight came off of us and then kind of more into the general part of Colorado. But we did have to spend the weekend. You know, the county health department was, you know, they did announce the building that the case was in. And, you know, it adds a lot of fear in people. You know, we had started getting a good flow of cancellations coming in. Over the weekend, we came up with a formula and a plan using, I mean, the CDC website is very good. You just have to dig for the information. It's not the easiest thing to read, but we also have the county giving us, you know, specific pages and stuff on how to clean the property.
Okay.
And so, you know, we kind of went over the chemicals and the process and what protective gear we needed to use over the weekend, but immediately we started doing rapid social distancing as well with our company. So really proud of our team. They basically, this has been kind of a kicked around idea for years of a drive-in check-in. We do have a front desk check-in office where people do check in or, you know, get their keys and get maps and information. And so suddenly it went from sort of that kicked around idea to reality within a few hours. And so we had a drive-in check-in. We started communicating with guests about not coming in our office. And, you know, we would come out to you and hand your keys to the car. You know, I was on a live chat with my team. The first 3 guests just ignored everything. They came right into our office, all the signs, everything, made a few tweaks, and it went from idea to implementation in just hours. And I was so impressed with our team for doing that. So on Tuesday, March 10th, that's when we finally got all the disinfectants and all the equipment we needed to go in and clean the property. So it was our housekeeping manager, Carmen, and our general manager, Tyson, and myself went in and cleaned the property. That's unnerving going into a property. I wasn't about to send you know, anybody else into the property. I want to make sure that, you know, I know what I'm doing, make sure it's safe. And I don't think Tyson or Carmen felt comfortable sending anybody else in there. It was a long job, and we went in and we cleaned. It was we killed everything basically. There was nothing living in that property at this point in time. But it took 8 hours. It was something where you're kind of going into unknown. You have some CDC guidelines for cleaning a room, but you know, during that time when you're cleaning a room, you know, obviously there's doorknobs and handles and but then, you know, Tyson is like, well, gee, did they open up the blinds? Do we have to clean the blind strings? I'm like, oh, probably. You know, what do they touch? Obviously TV remotes, but did they touch anything else? And so it's kind of this big project that just kind of explodes on you as far as getting all that done. So we got all that cleaned, and honestly, I woke up the next morning and my lungs were really clear because I inhaled lots of stuff that kills everything. And I felt like, oh God, we finally got through this. Like, oh, that was a really intense time frame. Well, that didn't stop. Really fast, within just a few days, our Colorado governor announced that, hey, this is pretty serious. Anyone over 60 should not go to the mountains. And so it was, had a few more cancellations. And then the very next day, the governor said, well, you know what, getting out and skiing, you're out in the middle of the air, that's good. So yeah, you should go skiing. The very next day, Vail Resorts, who owns Keystone ski resort, decided to close all their North American operations. So Keystone, the ski resort itself, closed. And so then very shortly after, the county health order came that they are shutting down all ski slopes, and they do want all guests to depart. And they gave us about a day and a half to get that done. And we just got flooded with cancellations. And so, this kind of whipsaw effect, it was not easy to keep up with that. And we're still kind of dealing with it. Things have kind of stabilized at this point. But, those rapid fire things, I didn't see the ski slopes coming when it did happen. And so, just trying to prepare ahead of time. And I basically sat down with Tyson and was like, okay, let's just plan for the worst possible case scenario and work our way backwards. And by the time the Summit County sent out their health order to shut down and let guests go, I don't think the ink had even dried on our plan. But when it did happen, it was like, okay, well, at least we have something scribbled down at this point that we can start from and have a little bit of preparation. But we've been trying to stay ahead of this for a long time. So just the pile of cancellations, phone calls, we did kind of curate a process for canceling reservations, but literally our income was completely shut off when all that happened. Any people coming in for spring break just canceled. We tried to move reservations forward. And so basically last week, on Thursday at noon is when all the guests had to be out. It was just, everyone's been working so hard, and we had just kind of got everybody together, and I was like, you know what, we need to make a decision, and I think we just need to take a break. This has been going on since March 5th, and we just need to take a break. And so we made a decision. We had a kind of a rough cash flow projection of where we are, and so we basically gave all employees just 2 paid days off, just to take care of themselves, regroup, get back into a fresh mindset. And, normally during this time of year, we kind of make a gradual shift into our off season. So our off season activities, all the guests depart, our housekeepers ramp up into deep cleaning and disinfection, carpet cleaning, maintenance, taking care of all those loose chairs and cabinet knobs that need tightening. And so we do have off-season activities. We don't ever just shut down. And for the very first time in 19 years, we actually just shut down. We put everything into voicemail and just we're done. And it was a decision I feel really good about. Yes, it was costly, but just for the well-being of our employees and our crews, I think that's just important to do. And one thing I did ask of everybody is, we have some ideas about how to proceed with off-season and stuff, but we're in some hard times right now, and I need everyone's input. So we started a document, just a shared document, and just the agreement is that during your break and you're just thinking about things, or when you come back, I need tons of ideas. And so we have this growing list of ideas right now that's it's actually pretty incredible. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out of this. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Yesterday, Colorado went into a stay-at-home order. And so, as far as this Colorado stay-at-home order, our business is considered essential in a few different areas, making sure that properties are clean, not freezing, and maintained. And that's basically our mission to our owners, is make sure we are here to take care of your property. You live across the country, and we will take care of your property.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are right now. We're not through it yet, but we're getting there. A couple things that we did through this entire process was keeping up with the huddle. And that happens every Wednesday at 12:30 for us. And we brought it into an online huddle instead of a live huddle for social distancing. But we really did a lot of talking to kind of quell the fear in people. And one thing I really liked that we were able to do is show people, we saw our plan for profit before tax was 670,000, and it went down here just on this Wednesday to $30,644. And I'm telling you about the $44 because those $44 make a lot of difference at this point. But I've seen our teams, really start dropping, any costs that they can. They're looking for creative ways to do things. But it was really comforting for me as an owner of business to, not have to get in front of everybody and say, look, everything's going to be fine. I was able to tell them, we're all in this together. You know what the numbers are. We're sharing that with you. We have been sharing this with you. You've seen a dramatic drop. Yes, we do have some major problems going on. This is where I need your help. But everyone's informed. I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes at all. And I really felt really good about being able to share that with our team. I feel like it has really brought our team together in a big way.
So, Peter, let me ask you a few questions here, because first of all, I think the listeners need to understand that, number one, you started the great game last fall, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a newbie, baby. You are a newbie, and I love the fact that you're staying close to those basic practices like the huddle. I love that you said you were trying to quell fear and give information, and frankly, you've got one of those leadership characteristics we preach so much about, which is courage and vulnerability, right? You're sitting here doing an interview when you just told me you basically lost everything in your revenue side of things, and sounds like your profitability as well. First, so two questions. One is, what are you taking? Because I want some. And secondly, we're getting questions from the viewing audience saying we'd love to hear some examples from you about the ideas and the actions that employees have come up with to help.
Sure. So, number one, this is not me. I have a team, our leadership team in our company is insane. And I get to work with these people with all these talents. This is what I enjoy. This is not all me with all these ideas. I do not have all the answers, but we're collectively, we do have all the answers, or in getting what we think are the answers anyway.
Right.
But I don't take anything to answer your question. But some of these ideas are, we're gonna have to disinfect all these properties. We need some new processes. One idea that came out that we're still kind of kicking around is, it's expensive to live in a resort town. Through the Summit County order, you can provide long-term lodging. You can't have short-term lodging. So you have to have somebody stay 30 days or longer. And, can we help out our employees? Are there other people we can help with long-term lodging that's affordable? Since we're now in this crisis, can we help other people cut costs? One thing that kind of an idea that came from actually our governor, he had a press conference, and the tail end had this pot of gold, which is, call your brokers, or your not mortgage brokers, but your mortgage lenders and your banks, and see if you can defer those payments. So the next day I picked up the phone and got my own primary house and my own property in Keystone deferred for 3 months. So, we got that information pushed out to our property owners. That gets a lot of fear out of the property owners, our employees.
Yes.
You can start asking for deferments on rent. So we tried to push that information out as far as we could. So those are just some of the few examples of things that we're doing. We have a vacation planning team. They're our sales team. They're our sales force. What can we sell? Is there extra cleaning services for properties that we don't manage that we could sell?
Right.
Is there maintenance that we can sell? So there's been some pretty creative ideas. It's still kind of a scrolling list. It's just going by as people put things in there. But those are some of the ideas that have kind of come out.
So the stakeholders in this thing, you're really trying to take the fear out for all the stakeholders. I'm thinking you've got information going back and forth with employees, of course, with your seasonal employees, with your property owners, with your county. one of the things that I heard you talk about was you even had some people come up with ideas of like, hey, there are healthcare workers now that basically are going to be in a hotel. Why don't they come and stay in a nice vacation property, a home?
Sure.
The idea that I think I also heard you talk about, some of the property owners said, hey, go ahead and do this work, this maintenance work that needs to be done. Does that provide you a little bit of revenue in these tough times?
It sure does. I reached out to the county the assistant manager who's kind of in charge of the housing of healthcare workers, and did, in this time, you know, we just need to keep people employed. That's all all it comes down to. It's not about profit. It's about keeping people employed and
Yep.
lightening the load on that payroll. And we're not housing any healthcare workers yet, but I did offer that to the county. And that's something that I hope they do take us up on that, because I think it's an important thing that we can do to help our community. And all the communication with our property owners, we did say, hey, now's the time if you need painting or a remodel or something like that. And yeah, we have had just a handful of owners on our property management program, say, yeah, we could use a remodel. We've been waiting for a time like this to do this. And so there is a little bit of work. It's not a ton, but it does help. Every little bit helps at this point.
Is there anything that employees came up with or talked about that you probably knew it should be done, but you were too busy before to do it?
Like I said, we've been kicking around that drive up check-in thing forever. And this is an idea that our general manager, Tyson, has been, we should do this. And it's like, yeah, we got all this other stuff to do. And just seeing that happen within the matter of hours. I think the idea and all the chats started really pouring in around 10 a.m. But that all came together so fast. And I'm so proud of our team for thinking that way. But just all the social distancing. The amount of cleaning that happens in our office. We immediately got as many people working at home as we could. Right now, just the other night, as we got the shutdown order from Colorado governor,
Right.
We can still do maintenance. And we actually had a meeting at 9 p.m. with all of our managers talking about what do we do? Is it, can we stay in business? And everybody, I think, agreed that we can stay in business. But the next question that Tyson asked was, should we stay in business? Is this something that's socially responsible to do? And we had a good amount of discussion around that. And then once we kind of got over that, we made, start working on concerns about maintenance. All of our maintenance guys use the same computer. So we're collecting up all the laptops that our vacation planners and our sales team have been using. And those are going to Keystone tomorrow. So that there's more laptops and we can have more, spread out of our maintenance crew. I reached out to a property owner and asked him, hey, instead of just using this little maintenance shop, can we use your garage? It's a 3-bay garage just so we can have more space, more ventilation. The owner said, sure. It's not just our employees, it's everybody. It's our customers. We've had a lot of encouragement from our property owners that we manage for. And it really is just amazing to see things kind of piece together bit by bit.
That's awesome. You mentioned you still have the weekly huddle. Are you doing any other of the practices other than transparency and communication via huddling? What other practices of the Great Game are helping you as a leader through this?
One thing we introduced, we didn't really touch on it too much this week. We did update it, but just a cash flow. So we did go through a cash flow. We introduced that into the huddle last week, and we kind of touched on it a bit this week. But really what we wanted to do is show our employees how much cash we have, how we're going to navigate this, what our costs are, and just see what our runway is. Our runway, at least last week, worst case scenario was into November, which sounds great, but there's a lot of stuff that has to come together for that to work.
Right.
So a revised one, we basically just ran it through the end of June right now, just to kind of see where we would be at the end of June. So we didn't do the full everything, but we're trying to get more detailed on that. But that's something we did bring into the huddle. We've also just brought in, safety of our employees. That is extremely important. We can't work if we're sick. And so just reminding people, don't touch your face, make sure you wash your hands, wear gloves. If you're cleaning your property, make sure you're wearing eye protection. We have some new disinfectants we're using that we haven't done in the past. And so there's a lot of things that we have brought in into the mix.
Yep.
That huddle experience each week, I think it's just great because it's not just your management team. I talk to them all the time, but you actually get to connect with every single person in the company, which I think has been very helpful. We also been, half our workforce is Spanish speaking. And so huddles take a little longer, a little more challenging, but we want to make sure that information gets out to every single person.
Right, right. And you got to cross those boundaries, and you've got the universal language there of the numbers.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to throw out there is what I heard you say is you kind of came up with your immediate plan. What's going to happen in the next 90 days? Jack was talking last week about the next 13 weeks. How do we get through that? And then you're looking out to November saying, we'll run out of runway about there. What can we do between now and then to extend the runway? And hopefully that means it's going to be snowing and everyone's healthy and there's a lot of pent up demand, right?
Hopefully.
What I got to ask is, these are my Barbara Walters questions, right? Knowing what you know now, what do you think you do differently, if anything?
Boy, what a tough question. I get more sleep
Yeah.
in between days. But it's really hard. I think, I don't know that we could have planned any further ahead. I'm kind of looking through my notes here that I made. I don't know that we could have planned any of this. I mean, if you think about, we're on day 22 of this crisis since March 5th. I'm counting the days at this point.
Sure.
And what could I have done? I could have executed and started the Great Game sooner. And I know that, I'm not trying to make this a plug for Great Game, but
that's all right. It's our
happened, 2 years ago, we'd be done. We wouldn't be where we are right now. We wouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think we could have done better. Get everybody involved in your financial picture and get their input. I think that's something I probably would have wanted to do, but honestly, I think we've done a pretty good job going through this. And I feel like, as a business owner, there are these times when you just have this gut punch and when they close the ski area, it was like, that was a gut punch. I'm like, okay, what do we do? And I got to say that our management team just is phenomenal. These, again, are not my ideas. I just so happen to be the owner of the company, but in reality, we all own the company. We're all taking care of it in the same way. And we all have that kind of ownership feeling. And it's just amazing to see people come together. So sorry, I don't have a great answer for you.
No, dude, I'm telling you it's a tough question. And for everybody viewing out there, I did not share this question with Peter. I wanted it to be raw and see. I think another question out of that same kind of zone is, let's say we get to November, December, let's say that it's just an incredible year for snow. What will you do differently in your planning, do you think? What's next for Summit Cove?
So this entire Great Game thing started for us when Tyson and I went to the gathering of the games, and our minds were blown. And this is a couple of years ago. But we kept hearing about how companies are like, times are good now, but you better be saving up. And I think that, we do have a better savings than we've had in the past. But to me, I think this is something that, when we do have good times, we're going to be shuffling some money away. We're definitely making sure that we are preparing for the bad times much more so than we have in the past. And I feel good about right now that we have done some preparation. It's not perfect, but, I feel like we're in a pretty decent position. But, again, we're still not totally through this. We're hoping that we can open for summertime. If we can't open for summertime, we're going to have to get even more creative about what we can do. So there's a lot still kind of in flux.
So we've got a couple of questions for you, Peter. Do you think that there will be opportunities in the off season, the summer? Is there a summer season that you have diversified business? I'm imagining, people coming out for other things, mountain biking and hiking and whatnot. Is that something that already exists, or tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the summer season in Keystone, we basically make about 80 to 85% of revenue during the ski season, which is basically November through April. The summer season, there is a summer season, but it's not really that big. It includes family reunions, weddings,
Right.
Really, the big drivers of revenue are these festivals. One of my favorite festivals, late June, is the Bacon and Bourbon Festival in Keystone.
That's two
So
food groups.
exactly. So there are some opportunities, but it depends on if those festivals can run or not. If they can't, I think that it we might actually have a summer season of just people being tired of being at home. You can go to Keystone and be fairly isolated, in your property and going and doing these things and not being at a big gathering. So, if they do loosen some restrictions, we might be able to have a summer season. But it's, going into November, it's amazing, a lot of the cancellations that we have had. People just immediately like, nope, just move my reservation 1 year. I'm still coming for spring break next year. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. So one thing we learned through the recession 10 years ago was that skiers will still ski. If you got no job, you still have a ski pass and you're gonna ski.
Yeah. Well, of course, we hope that some of the summer business will help you offset the winter or the spring losses here.
Yeah.
I know you got a long way to go. Another question that came in, I think it's a good one. You've got a significant number of employees who English is a second language. Do you translate huddles into Spanish in real time?
It is something where, when we call up the numbers, we've all gotten really good at calling out the Spanish numbers as well. So that's something that's pretty universal now in our huddle. If there's an explanation about a line item, we do pause about that and, on English, and let our one of our housekeepers or housekeeping manager can translate that into Spanish.
Okay.
And so we do. The huddles take long. I mean, they're sometimes up to 30 minutes. So they do take longer, but we want to make sure that everyone has a good understanding of what's going on. We're not trying to just rush through this.
Right. So do you still keep in touch with Kevin Walter on a regular basis?
Kevin has actually been essential in this entire process. When Tyson first reached out to him during this time frame, Kevin sent us just a whole bunch of ideas that he's working on with Tasty Catering. And
right.
One of his ideas was, and I didn't talk to him directly, but how can you remain essential? So if there's a shutdown, how can you remain essential? How can you serve your community, your healthcare workers in your business? And for him, I'm probably going to slaughter this story, but I believe that he was providing food to healthcare workers in some way, shape, or form. But that's pretty out of the box thinking. I mean, that's cool. Yeah. So that's something where how can we remain essential during this time frame? And that's it's not just about me and our company and all that sort of thing. If we had to shut down, we'd shut down. But
sure.
How can we help our community? Summit County is a pretty small area. And I just saw a comment that says, "Woo, Kevin, love that man." Yeah, we do too. But it's, Summit County is a small place, and they've been trying to tell people to get out of the mountains, and we just don't have the health capacity to handle any crowds. And I'll feel great if they do take us up on that offer to house a healthcare worker for sure.
Yeah. Well, the story that you've told has been really inspiring for us, and I love the fact that you're not only leaning on your people, your management team, your coach, but also the community. You're sharing stories, and you've got this courage to tell your story to help all of us. I mean, at SRC, we're dealing with a lot of the same things. How do we remain essential? How do we keep people working? How do we distance them when really they need to work closely together? So all I can say, Peter, is thank you so much for having
Sure.
The generosity of spirit to come on and tell your story. And please send our very best to all of your team.
Will do.
Your county, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So next, what we've got up, guys, is, and by the way, each week we'll try to bring you someone new from the community that is like Peter, that's a real champ, getting out there and making things happen, even when it'd be very easy to say, well, they shut us down, we give up. He's not rolling over. This is get up and fight. So what we want to do next is we've collected a lot of questions on our site. Again, greatgame.com/crisis. We want to make sure that that's there. All the resources that we mentioned, another shameless plug. The thing is, you can plug your questions in there. What we've done is Michelle And Brian and Rich and I and the team have tried to consolidate the questions that you have, and we'll try to answer those live. So if I can, Rich, I thought I'd throw these at you and you can answer them. I might jump in here and there.
Please do.
We've broken them into categories, and we're creating a frequently asked question section on the site so that we can, you aren't looking at the same question over and over, right? We're continuing to add the categories. So let's start with a big one, cash. How do you walk the line between making cuts to stay afloat, but not cutting back so much that we're understaffed when things pick back up in a few months? This is what Jack was talking about. Get ready for the upturn, right? What is your opinion on that, Rich?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's a very, very appropriate question, and one that is a lesson learned we had from the 2009 recession. I remember Jack and our organization thinking about, and what Jack was sending the message is that there's probably a lot of fat in the organization to be able to cut. But what we saw with a lot of companies, they moved so quickly, they started to cut some muscle and cut some bone. And they really got into areas that cut so deep that when the upturn would come around, that they weren't prepared for that. And I think the question kind of comes back to this idea of how do you balance that? I think it's really trying to understand what's essential to your business in terms of the upside, and what is truly fat in the organization, and making and looking at what opportunities. I think the best place to find that is going back to your people. You can look at it from a high, from up high, but your people really know where the fat is. And for them to really understand what kind of critical times we're in, I think they can open up their eyes and say, look, what's essential to the business and what's truly fat. And we're not cutting into the muscle and the bone of our organization where it's going to penalize us once the upturn comes around. In terms of the idea that, there's the likelihood of the recession coming from this, what we're hearing, and I think, this is a time that we haven't experienced before. It's much different than what Black Swan was in 2009. But many of the economists like Bolio and others that we look at is that they really feel like this is going to be a V-shaped recovery. And in other words, maybe there is a slight down, a sharp downward to the economy, but it's going to quickly recover, and people need to be ready for that. I think you used the words earlier, Steve, and maybe Peter did too, about the idea of pent up demand. I think that's something everybody needs to be aware of, is that there's a lot of services people want right now, but can't get those services. And when it comes around, we're going to be crushed, and that can hurt a lot of organizations. So thinking about how you're managing the business in the next 60 to 90 days, with an eye toward what if we get slammed with a 50% increase into our business, how are we going to manage that appropriately? In two ways. Is one, can we service it? But in the other way, if we can't service it directly, how do we still help the customer in some way so that it doesn't reflect on us in terms of how we're servicing that customer?
No, thanks, Rich. Along those lines, we got a question live as well that kind of ties in. I just like to answer it myself. And of course, Peter or Rich, if you have anything to add, please do. The question is, how do we explain to employees that the company needs to keep some cash in the bank versus paying full salaries or other cuts so we don't go broke in the process? I have spent this week talking to a lot of business owners around the country, and it's amazing how many have talked about people have been volunteering. And so I'll go back to what Jack talked about last week, is go to the end of the world, figure out where, like Peter, you talked about runway. Where's the end? Where do we just have to shut down? And walk back 3 or 4 steps and say, well, we're here now, we're healthy enough, but what do we have to cut? And Rich, you just hit it. What's fat? What's muscle? What's bone? I think that you've got to go to the end. That's something that Jack has taught me personally, is looking at that economic reality and going, oh my God, it makes me sick to my stomach. But then walking back, you go, these are the things we can do to avoid it and never get there. The next question comes about credit. I don't know if I'm talking to open book practitioners or drug run and money launderers, because check this one out. if I draw on my credit and keep it in the same bank, they can just grab it from my account. Should I move cash to another bank? What do you think?
Well, I guess my response is if it's all a relationship with your bank, right, and your trust with your bank. But I think that that's the important thing is to make sure that you feel like you have a good relationship with your bank and you can make that decision based off of that. I think the important thing right now is that what we're hearing from practitioners and really is kind of the advice we're looking at as small businesses of SRC is that if you have lines of credit to go out there and make sure you secure that line of credit, and in fact, meaning borrow against that line of credit and secure those funds now as quick as you possibly can. To your point, Steve, is to have to really understand your debt capacity that you have and then be able to communicate that to your employees about this is where we're at, and we have this much gap between our where we are now and what our debt capacity is. That's where we need to operate, and being able to then break that down in terms of, the levels as you talked about. Well, there's some certainly some fat in the organization that we could take out. If it gets closer, maybe there's some benefits we're providing the employees that we can't provide. All the way to the last measure is to have to make a decision in terms of layoffs or cut hours or cut pay, that sort of thing. All those things can be lined out, but it all starts with what's my debt capacity.
Yeah, no, very
Just
good.
a kind of a quick thing too, I want to add in is, you can talk to your vendors too. For us, we have a linen vendor that immediately when this happened and the ski slopes closed, I reached out to them. We have an amazing working relationship with them. It's Alsco, they're a worldwide textile company. And asked them like, hey, what can we do to defer payments? We're happy to pay the full amount, but we just need extra time. And when you have that kind of relationship with a vendor, their response was pay what you can right now, and we'll figure that out. And so those kind of relationships, whether with your bank or vendors or customers, anything like that are helpful. So if you're not on the phone with these folks now, get on the phone with them right now.
You have time, right? So that's interesting because now you're looking at it from all different ways as everyone on this call should, which is how much credit do I have available? How much should I get? How much cash should I have? Where's the end of the runway? You even went to your software folks and talked to them about an accommodation, didn't you, Peter?
We sure did. I don't have an answer back from them yet, but I know that they are working on it, and it's something that I just appreciate. We've already paid for this month, so they're working on next month, and that's Track Hospitality. But it's just those kind of relationships make a big difference. Unfortunately, ones you probably can't negotiate with, or if you're relying on Microsoft or Google for your subscriptions and all your cloud infrastructure. I hope they're going to get flexible here at some point, but don't cancel and don't not pay those critical infrastructure folks. But if you do have some relationship type vendors, definitely reach out to them. You can use that as very short-term credit.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. So communication, that's the big message. Get in touch with people now. Be the first in line. Make sure they know where not only your heart is, but where your wallet is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about people for a little bit here. Let's talk about, there's been questions about the health of our employees, about shelter in place orders, social distancing. How do you make the right decision, Rich, for any given organization, keeping in mind that we all need to operate right now, but we also have to think about society at large? Thoughts about that?
Yeah, again, a very good question. Don't have all the answers to this. We're balancing ourselves as a essential business SRC, right? I think again, it comes back to just communicating and educating people on the fact that we certainly as being designated an essential business provides us an opportunity to keep looking, but at the same time, when they're working, they could be put at risk if they do a good job of maintaining the workplace they're in. So it goes back to making sure that the employees do understand that we do have their health and safety in the forefront, and just keep pounding that and And I think great game of business companies have a little bit of an advantage that they've already had a lot of communications ways about the need for money and the need for cash in business. And they've already put that in a, you know, they've already set that into a mindset to the employees that that's needed as well as a good solid job to keep their jobs. So to balance those two is a little bit easier conversation. But that's exactly how I would encourage you to do that through these times. In terms of practical ways, obviously, you know, there's a lot of resources that have been made available how to keep the right safe workplaces. And I mentioned some of those earlier. We're, you know, incorporating at our own facilities, including just, you know, the simple idea of making sure when they're coming into work that they're not running a fever. It gives everybody else some calmness about who's them.
Yeah, nobody wants to work with Typhoid Mary, that's for sure. Got another question that's very timely for today. You know, if this stimulus bill gets through, do you think it'll impact everyone's ability to keep people? Do you think it's that sweeping?
Well,
Peter, you're nodding.
I think it will. You know, we're talking about runway, and you know, there's this, one of them is, you know, if you don't lay people off, there's chances it could be forgivable. And, you know, that's huge. I think if, you know, if I can use a loan or something like that and not lay people off and it's forgivable, holy cow. Yes, that will absolutely make a giant difference for a company like mine, without a doubt. And a lot of other companies, owners that I know.
So we've had a ton of questions about the details, the bullet points, the subtext, all about the just the legislation coming through, but also about CDC mandates and state issued warnings and stay-at-home orders, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to just say we can't answer all those questions in this format. We'd like to stay toward the great game of business and open book, kind of the people, the money, it's people, it's both kind of context. But I would encourage you to kind of follow Peter's lead, and Jack and Rich and all of us at SRC, take action, go out there and find out who you need to talk to and learn about it. There are lots of great webinars going on the technical aspects of it, but the big thing is, man, take some action. Action cures fear, and that's our biggest enemy right now. I think we have time for just one more question, Rich, and I'm going to kind of put it in this context. People have been asking about what all are you doing now? Peter mentioned the huddles, that sort of thing. Are people still doing mini games? Because that's a big deal right now. People ought to be doing mini games. Traditionally, you should, you know, never end one early. But in today's unprecedented times, what's your advice to people on mini games, Rich?
Well, it's interesting. I see Peter laughing right now, so I'm curious.
I'm laughing
relatively new. What's that?
I'm laughing because we had our maintenance crew was doing slaying out work orders. Our housekeeping team was trying to get better reviews, and we had customer satisfaction type mini games since we had customers, and now we don't. So I think those have been kind of paused as far as work orders go. You know, those usually get caught up with those, but yeah, we're gonna have to redesign our mini games for sure during this time frame.
It's Peter. I mean, it's really what the mini game has been put around. Is it relevant today? And your people will tell you that if it's relevant or it's not relevant, right?
Yeah.
And I know that we always play the games through, but you do have some different challenges, and you want to put all the energy to those challenges right now. So I wouldn't shy away from looking at those. What I would suggest is that, you know, if the people created that mini game and they did it for a reason, is to make sure that decision comes from them and not yourself. Hey, scratch all the mini games as a leader. Is to go back to your people and say, is this a relevant game, knowing what the reality we have right now.
Awesome. Well, we have come to the end of our time together. Again, Rich, thank you so much for joining. Peter, what a great guest you've been. I may have to have you every time because
thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that. I do want to throw this in, guys. We have another question for the community. This is for you. There's two questions. One is, how are you huddling today? So share your photos. Are you doing it with Zoom? Are you doing it with some sort of, GoToMeeting, whatever, anything that's unique? Are you just 6 feet apart doing a distance kumbaya? I don't know what you're doing, but we want to know. Secondly, how many of you have created your 13-week or 90-day plan? Remember, Jack said last week, he said, we're making a 13-week plan. We're going to make sure, we're alive for that period of time because a lot can change. Tell us your plan and tell us if you've done it. If you haven't done it, here's a hint. You better do it. So it's been great. Rich, anything else to add?
No, I just want to reiterate that, that this webpage, greatgameofbusiness.com/crisis will have a lot of this resources. I know it's this once a week kind of get together here, and Peter was awesome to come in and provide his take on the situation and what they've done. There's a lot of other practitioners can share those stories in real time on the webpage, and so everybody can have that resource because everything's so fluid.
Absolutely. Well, keep in mind, as Rich said, greatgame.com/crisis. Get the audio book for free. Get all the great guides for free, and there's more coming. Also in April, guys, coming soon, just in a few weeks, we'll have the Survive and Thrive with the Great Game of Business, a full day virtual workshop that's teaching you how to leverage the power of great game to not only survive the current challenges of the day, but to thrive in the days soon to come. So thank you all so much. It's been great to spend an hour with you, and we'll see you next week, same time. Take care. God bless.